one of the key tenets of real estate is location, location, location. And why do we say that? Well, there's the bigger picture of location. Which city do you want to be in? There is the next step down in location. Which part of the city do you want to be in? And then you get down to what corner do you want to be on? And making the wrong decision in any one of those can have a huge impact on the success of your transaction or of your development project or whatever you're doing. It's location, location, location. Now, for a local developer, if you're a real estate developer who only works in one city, that helps. It makes it a lot easier to figure out where you're going to build something. But many real estate developers in the United States work in many, many cities. And it's important for them to understand which cities are the best cities. And that's part of market analysis. You cannot be a successful real estate anybody, let alone a real estate developer, if you do not understand the importance of market analysis, of knowing what's going on in a city, why it's going on in a city, who lives there, how much money do they make, how many families are there, do they need more apartments in this location, or do they need a shopping center in this location? What do retailers think about that corner instead of that corner? I remember there was a time when Starbucks was actively developing all over the country. And it was really exciting in the real estate development business, especially if you were developing a shopping center, if you got a Starbucks. That meant you were absolutely in the right spot. But if you were on the wrong side of the street on the going to work traffic, the drive-in was never going to wind up at your property. That is a big miss. Location, location, location. Keep it in mind. It will make all the difference. And you will find that tenants will decide whether or not they want to be there because of that decision. Communities can decide how supportive they are of you because of that decision. The capital you'll need to help build your project will be influenced by your decision around where you're going to build. So don't ever miss that step. I think one of the unique opportunities as a real estate developer is to be able to see the trend before the trend is seen by everybody else. Because being in first often can lead to the quickest and the best payoff. Now, you can be too early. Let's be real. You can be so cutting edge that you beat everybody there by way too much time. But it's important for real estate professionals and especially real estate developers to be able to find trends. Where young people are buying now, does that mean you should actually think about what services are they going to need? What sort of other real estate needs to be developed around them? And then build the relationships or build the connections that might position you to buy that key piece of land before someone else gets it. Now, that may mean you don't exactly know what you're going to build there, but you do know why you're going to build there. You're going to build something there that works. Your market analysis will tell you what that is, and it's because you were ahead of the curve. And I think about in Chicago, one of the great examples of being ahead of the curve. There's a new submarket in Chicago known as the Fulton Market District. It's been there forever. It used to be where all of the food purveyors in the city had their properties. So you had the meat guys and the seafood guys and the deli meat guys and all this stuff, and they were there. And it was gritty. It was, tractor trailers. It was not really sexy, but it was 4 blocks from downtown. One day, there was a young group, a young startup real estate development group who had found some success in taking an old building that no one had paid any attention to for many, many years in that same area and turning it into an office building that was instantly leased up by a corporation that moved in from the suburbs. Whoa, what's that about? They saw a trend. They saw land that was underutilized. They saw the growth of downtown Chicago going west of the river and saw a value opportunity to buy a building that no one had looked at and made an incredible play with that. Now, it helped that they had resources that was willing to take that risk with them. They bought an empty cold storage building. Cold storage building, like what is that? It's a building where basically people kept things that needed to be kept cold. So it was frozen. The building was frozen. They bought the building, they tore off the outside, and they thawed the building. No one had ever done this before. No one knew what you had when you got through with unthawing 6 floors of concrete. They wound up creating the coolest office building that suddenly Google decided that they wanted to occupy. Trend, young people moving west, city expanding beyond its boundaries, opportunity not being seen by other people and being willing to take a risk ahead of the curve in location. Incredible success. And that was the trigger for the creation of a whole new submarket in Chicago in less than 5 years. It is now the hottest submarket in Chicago. McDonald's moves in from the suburbs. Google has a large facility there. New hotels, new retail, new condos, new everything. All because of location and opportunity. It's very cool. So now that we've found our site and we've been thinking about, what is going on around us and we've got our location, it's like, why do we want to build this versus that? Why are we building an office building here instead of a shopping center? And a lot of that's going to be impacted by what your market analysis will tell you and the supply and demand for that space. So in history, in cities, in every city you go to, there was a time where the only thing you built was a 4-story building, right? Maybe. And it was usually not all that, spectacular. But it worked just fine. And why was it built there? Because at that time, that is what the users of that space said they wanted. They wanted to be able to walk up to their offices. You weren't doing a ton of tall elevator stack buildings. They wanted to be on streets where there was street parking or a lot of people were walking by. Well, now that's kind of cool in some places, but office demand sometimes says we want to have a shiny 50-story office building with our name on the top of it. Why build that? Because that's what your market says it wants. Why build that apartment building with shops on the first floor? Because where you are, those tenants, your residents, maybe need a convenience store or maybe need a dry cleaner or something on the first floor because there aren't conveniences otherwise. So why do you build what you build? It's because the market is telling you what it needs. When you don't listen to the market, it's when you're setting yourself up for what may be a fairly challenging project. So you find your site. Why do you want to build there? Because the market is demanding it and supply and demand says it makes sense. And you know what they want. And that's what's really amazing is that you look at cities right now, and everything's got to come back to Chicago. Although I do, I can talk about other markets, but maybe not as well as I can about my backyard. So Chicago is a city of incredibly tall skyscrapers of office buildings and a place where people go, why do we keep building office buildings here? Don't we have enough office buildings? And it's because people who occupy these buildings are saying, I don't want to have my office over there anymore. I want my office over there. So why are you building that office building somewhere where no one would have ever thought you needed to build one? Because the market says it wants to be there. Everywhere you go, there are high-rise apartment buildings being built in the middle of every city in the country. Every city in the country. And even if the city says it's not having great employment growth, because really apartments are for young people for the most part, the numbers, the market analysis tells you people want to live in cities. We need to build the sort of places where they want to live. And it used to be only people under the age of 35 were counted as apartment users. Boomers, the market analysis tells you boomers are selling their houses in the suburbs. They want to live in the city. Let's build them a high-rise. Let's build them an expensive high-rise because that's where they want to live. So no matter what you may think about what's going on in your market, knowing what the supply and demand is, knowing what people want to use your space for or why they want to be in that space is imperative for making the decision. And while as an outsider, you sit there and go, there's no way. There's no way. There are not enough people moving here to fill this. Somebody says it does. Someone says it makes sense. And the developers are going to take that as being a good sign for their moving ahead with their project, although 10 other developers are reading the same report. So it's an interesting thing in the real estate space. Big projects go through a lot of time and a lot of change. So what to build? So you found a really great site and you did your market analysis and it says, we have a location where people want to work. Perfect. You know, we should be able to do this. What are we going to do? You get your designers together and you go, this is our site. And we want to build office on this site because we have so much office demand that is totally unmet. And this is what we want to do. So they come up with these great plans. I love renderings for proposed projects. They're always the best looking project. The grass is always green. There are mature trees. There are people walking everywhere. It all works. Remember I said development can take a long time. There are many projects in this world where the rendering looks a little different than what you got. So initially, it would be, let's build 4 50-story office buildings, and we're going to build 1 million square feet of shopping space because all the market studies say that's the way it should be. Well, by the time you go through the city process, the community involvement with that, you start raising money for it, and you start trying to find your first tenants, it can be 5 years later. 5 years later. There are not that many shoppers who need 1 million square feet of retail space on your site by the time you get ready to build it. What you build has to change. You can go online and look at some of the most storied multi-building projects in the country. Hudson Yards in New York. You can look at you look at Lakeshore East here in Chicago. Big urban tracts of land just waiting to be developed and developers thinking they've got the story between what they thought they were going to build and what they wound up building can look very, very different. So what to build is driven by market, but is checked by reality. And that reality can be how much it'll cost. It can be the passage of time, the change in consumer attitudes. It can be the change in the city's goals. It could be, think about this, the importance around sustainability and environmental impact that can change your design or what you can build there. It can be finding that rare species of bird living on your site. When you go to build the first building, suddenly that's not happening. So what to build, bringing in your contractors, bringing in your architects, bringing in your city officials, also including your lawyers at all times, and probably some of your finance people are helping you figure out kind of what are we really gonna build when it's time to put that first shovel in the ground. And we have to just acknowledge it may not look like you thought it would.